All right, welcome back. As promised, James Gregg, MMA expert for the UT. Got your column. What day does that run? Your column?
On Tuesdays.
Tuesdays. I know that. I just tested it. You were on February 23rd, UFC 157. Historic because it was the first UFC event, the main event, the co-main event. Ronda Rousey and San Diego's Liz Carmouche. We all know now.
Yeah.
Ronda Rousey, another first round arm bar, she wins.
Yeah.
How was it?
It was fun. It was really interesting for me to go. It was my first UFC.
You've covered a lot of MMA, but this was your first UFC.
Yeah, I mean, I've shot a lot of
How'd you miss the first
events,
156?
I know, I've been slacking off.
What was it like, though? I mean, because it was that historic fight, I mean, because you had these two women, what was it like inside there? And what was the whole experience like?
I mean, it was really interesting. It was a super high-profile event. I've watched a lot of them on TV, so they tend to look into the crowd and things. There's celebrities everywhere, and there's lots of fighters everywhere that are well-known to people who know the sport. And it's in Anaheim, so there's a lot of MMA activity in Southern California. So whenever you're in that area, it's a huge draw. A lot of women that you don't typically see at UFC events were there. I mean, probably a dozen or so of the top women in the world in that division were also kind of, comp tickets up front. So there's a lot of buzz. It was really interesting.
That's cool.
By trade, you're a photographer.
Yep.
And you do video. Let's take a look at some of the pictures from the event. And you can kind of walk us through this, James, in terms of what we're looking at and just what it was like. We want to hear what it was like for you shooting this.
Yeah.
It's really neat. I mean, photography-wise, it's a little bit challenging because you've got a black fence right in front of you. So, images like this one, I'm using a longer lens. You can kind of get in between the focus throws it out enough so that it doesn't really block your view in the image. When you get a wider shot, that kind of changes because just the way that the camera works, you tend to see that fence a lot more. So you kind of mix it up. It's a little hard to focus sometimes because that camera will want to pick up on the fence.
Now this is Mioto and our guy from Temecula?
Right.
Is that?
Not this fight, but
this fight. What are we looking at here?
They're in here. Oh, this was the fight of the night. This is these guys just brawled back and forth. It's it's not Dennis.
What's happening right here?
The guy's getting clocked in the face.
It looks like it.
Yeah, these guys had fight of the night. Typically, that gets awarded to the people who have the best back and forth, action, really hard battles and things like that. Both
this
these guys
is the follow-through on that same photo, am I right? This is the follow-through on that same move, it looks
those guys beat each other up so much, I can't even remember. I mean, they really had a good, strong back and forth battle. This is a heavyweight fight between Brendan Schwab and I'm blanking out on his name.
It was 2 weeks ago.
It was a lot of fights that night, but you look for you want to get these kind of peak moments when there's a lot of things going on in MMA.
And their faces. I mean,
faces are great.
Yeah.
The muscles of these guys being born out there, it's great.
I love what you guys can do.
There's a lot going on.
Oh man,
and
look at that one.
A picture. It's worth 1,000 words.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. You want to get as much variety as you can. You want to get a lot of dynamic action with it. Sometimes they bleed, and that's always good for pictures.
Just even
get
that,
the sweat flying,
sweat,
classic boxing kind of a look.
So you're down there with a whole bunch of other photographers or media people, and they just kind of give you a spot. Can you pick us? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, in this case, I'm assigned a spot. The UFC's been really good for me in terms of accommodating requests that I have.
Yeah.
So they put me right cage side. I mean, I could literally reach out and touch the fence.
You should do that sometime.
So
this is Henderson right here.
This is Henderson and Machida.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a...
Ooh, that's cool.
This was a fight, I know this kind of touched a nerve with you. Henderson ended up losing. Right. Temecula guy. Yeah. But his opponent sort of ran away from him and just sort of won.
Well, Machida is a master at hitting and not getting hit. That's kind of fighting, right? Where, Dan Henderson later complained that Lyoto did a really good job of not fighting him because he kept his distance, he'd get a couple shots in, and then he'd run circles around him. Yeah. So Henderson couldn't really get his hands on him and ended up kind of squeaking out a decision. It wasn't the most exciting fight in the world, but ultimately Machida ends up beating the #1 contender. So who knows what that means.
Let's talk more about Ronda Rousey and just what she's been able to do. I mean, she gets Liz Carmouche with the armbar again. Right now, I mean, you can't stop this woman. What do you think this is going to do going forward, propelling women's fighting in the UFC?
This is the arm bar right here.
Right.
That's it. You're wondering what an arm bar is.
Well, you can see how tough. I mean, you can see why people get caught in that. Ronda's the best in the world at this. She's been a bronze medalist judoka. Look at her strength that she's got in her upper body and in her legs. And when she gets this wrapped up on somebody, she's using all of her weight. She's using all of her strength to pull that arm free. And this is the point in which Liz almost got the fight.
She almost got her. Right.
Liz took her back. A jiu-jitsu term to actually get somebody in their most vulnerable spot, and then you try to apply apply a choke. And Liz was very, very, very close to having a huge upset in
the
this
way
fight.
I read your story is that Rousey was almost passed out. I mean, she had a tough time coming back from that.
She really did. Yeah, I mean, there's an image in here someplace of when Rousey got free finally. You know, this doesn't feel good. Yeah. When you have your face mashed like that. And Liz is an incredibly strong woman. Right. So, you know, the only thing that kept this from being a finish was that Liz didn't get what they call a body triangle. If she gets her left ankle locked behind her right knee, then Ronda can't peel those legs off, and she's going to be stuck there for a very long time.
I can only imagine what was the arena going right now.
Exactly.
They got to be going absolutely nuts at this point.
Berserk. I mean, it was deafening in there. I had earplugs in so that I could concentrate on what I was doing, but it was still just deafening. You know, once Liz was getting bucked off, she strategically chose to stay in a more of a defensive position on the ground. But that's Ronda's bread and butter. When she's got somebody on the ground, she's going to get in there. And ultimately, Liz did as good of a job. Well, she did better than anyone in terms of defending that armbar. She did it exactly right. But that's just how good Ronda is. She broke that grip in 11 seconds left in the first round. Was able to get Liz tapped out.
What's next? I mean, I know you were pretty outspoken about and it was pretty obvious. Not like you're a genius, James, but UFC was Ronda's their girl.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. So what happens now?
Well, now they've got all kinds of contenders lined up. They've got Kat Zingano versus Miesha Tate, who was in here a few months back.
Right.
So they're going to fight in April, I believe, and the winner of that is expected to get the shot against Ronda next.
Ooh, I hope it's Miesha. She doesn't like her.
Yeah.
No, she doesn't.
Kat's
pretty vicious herself. She's a really those two is going to be a really good competitive match, and you know, people are starting to look at some of the things that Ronda is displaying as a weakness. That's the second time that somebody's taken her back like that.
Yeah.
So someone could figure that out more.
You know, if Liz jumps up into her face and gets a bunch of punches in there, who knows what happens?
I went to the Tyson show last night. It reminded me, you know, he was invincible at one point. You always lose at some point. You know, just keep winning.
Someone figures you out. Exactly. Thanks for joining us, and we're going to have you on to preview all those fights going forward.
Yeah.